So I've been umming and ahhing about whether to do a blog video on this particular subject or not, because I am much happier talking about sobriety in a way that inspires you to change and helps you see alcohol-free living in a different light. I think that's a good place to be making change happen from. But I also know that it's important to talk about the reality of drinking, and part of that means looking at some of the risks that you're taking as a drinker. And I started thinking about this after a conversation with one of my students who's taken my Getting Unstuck course and quit drinking now. But she was thinking about all the mornings when she drove her daughter to school and hoped she was okay to drive, but she wasn't totally sure. And she's like many of us. She would never dream of drinking and driving in the evening. That was a no. But every morning she'd get up, drive to work, drop her daughter off on the way, and push through the rest of the day with a raging hangover. Was she safe to drive? Probably not on some days. So there was the risk of causing an accident and who knows what else happening. Or the risk of being pulled over on one of those random police checks and failing the breath test. I mean, apart from anything else, can you imagine how embarrassing that would be on a Tuesday morning to fail a breath test because you'd spent Monday evening after work quietly drinking at home alone in your kitchen? I know that I've definitely driven in the morning when I shouldn't have. That was a stupid risk to take. And thinking about that got me reflecting on all the other risks that you end up taking when you're drinking, some of them without really thinking about. Because if you are coming home from work and drinking several glasses of wine or a bottle of wine most nights or every night, then over the weeks and the months, that's quite a significant portion of your life where you are checked out, where you are not readily available or on it. You know, your car is parked in the drive. You are physically inside your house, but mentally, you're not totally there. So if something happens, if there's an emergency, if someone needs you, well, then it's hard to show up for them. It's hard to think clearly and work out what to do. And I can't tell you how many women I've worked with who tell me that after a certain point in the evening, they just stopped answering the phone because they didn't want to get caught out. They'd rather take the risk of being unavailable to that person rather than the risk of doing something they regret or saying something silly. But of course, it's all a risk, really. Then there's the risk of someone smelling alcohol on you the next day, or the risk you take when you just finish off a few work emails, but you're on your second or third glass of wine because you've had a really bad day, and now suddenly you feel a bit more inclined to write down what you really think. Then there's a risk you take when you pretend to remember that conversation you had with someone, or you pretend to remember what you agreed to, but actually it's all a bit of a blank in your mind. Then there's the risk you take when you pretend that you're just on your first drink, but it really isn't your first. So you hide the evidence of the others. What about the risk to your health that is frankly unavoidable when you use alcohol? A risk that you would probably rather not think about. All in all, it's a lot of risk taking. And it's not the sexy kind of risk taking. It's not the living life on the edge, pushing the boundaries because you're on the verge of something amazing. It's not that kind of big breakthrough risk taking. It's the worrying, scary, could lead to something really bad type of risk taking. The worst thing is that when other people see that too, they might want to stop taking a risk on you. And I wanted to share something that illustrates this really well. I have a Facebook group for some of the women who've taken my Getting Unstuck course. And the other day, one of my graduates, Heather, posted this really cute picture of her 2 grandchildren, and she said, "My sobriety not only delivers the energy to enjoy these 2 for the weekend, but also the trust of my son and daughter-in-law to share them with me. My son was very firm with me when I was drinking. I would not be allowed the grandchildren overnight. It wasn't a threat or a bribe, just a risk they weren't prepared to take." So I know this has been a tough video today and it's a hard topic to think about, but I want to finish with 2 questions for you. First of all, what are the risks that you are taking day in, day out with your drinking? The physical risks, the risks to your relationship, your career, your reputation, whatever it is. Allow your mind to actually go there for a minute, because if you're anything like I was, I suspect you try not to most of the time. My second question for you is, are those risks definitely worth it? Really? Personally, I decided they weren't. So I decided to take a risk on sobriety instead. I thought that I was so good at taking risks, I may as well extend that talent to something completely different. And taking a proper break from booze and committing to going all in and finding out what that really felt like, that was the best risk I've taken in a long time. So I'm Kate B. Let me know in the comments below how you feel about this, and I really hope you consider taking a risk on sobriety. Have a great week ahead.